welcome to the Baer Faxt Live from Hong Kong 2025. I am Boliang Shen, Head of Content of the Baer Faxt. Today we are really honored to have our friend and writer, arts editor of South China Morning Post, Enid Tsui. For those who are not in Hong Kong, South China Morning Post is the most influential English language newspaper in Hong Kong and founded 120 years ago, right, since 1903. Yeah. And I have been long time read and admired Enid's writings on art and culture in Hong Kong in the newspaper, and because she has very sharp insights and also very long time experience, first-hand experience in the local culture and art scene. And I'm really happy to share about her newly published book, Art in Hong Kong, Portrait of a City in Flux. I think it's really helped me to connect lots of pivotal moments I encountered in Hong Kong in the almost 15 years working in mainland China and in America as a journalist. And also it gives me very clear narrative with prehistory since the 19th century. And the most impressive part is a chapter called The New Hong Kong. It describes really first-hand experience on since the end of the pandemic, I think since the starting of the pandemic, how the local art system changed. And I think it's very special year this year. I just arrived the day before yesterday, and I experienced a very different atmosphere than last year. So I really want to know what's special significance with your book publishing this year. And also what do you hope the readers take away from reading this book?
Well, first of all, Boliang, thank you so much for inviting me to this live stream event, and for you to take the time to read the book and to have gained something from it means a lot to me, because you are also an extremely experienced observer of the art scene, and and so it does mean I think it is quite a significant moment in Hong Kong at the moment, because it's like it's a moment of restarting. Getting the engine going again, finding a new model, going forward in many aspects of society. And so we've had, for example, the big auction houses have now moved into their new custom-built spaces, Christie's in the Henderson, Sotheby's at Landmark, and earlier Phillips had already claimed their spot right outside Amplus Museum in West Kowloon. And so this week is quite special, because it's the first time that the Sotheby's and Christie's are holding their modern and contemporary art evening sales together, and also in the same week as Art Basel. And so we are going to find out if it works, because it's quite a change from the old days when the two houses would have, well, they would move into this building, the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center, and separately hold their spring and autumn auctions, which have, well, they're sort of mega sales where they would have every single category that they sell in Asia. They would have them all under one roof, and it was a spectacle. But they would do it like many weeks, with many weeks in between, so separately. And they're big enough to attract collectors to fly into Hong Kong for those mega auctions. But now that they are doing year-long sales, category by category, so it you can understand why they want to kind of combine forces, especially since the scale of the evening sales have gone down quite dramatically since the convention center days. So both houses only have 40-odd lots, so very curated evening sales coming up at the end of this week. So still, they're smaller, but compared to the old days when you have the art fairs in 1 week and then the auctions in a very different part of the year, this time it's a lot of art. Chasing after maybe the same wallets. So, so we'll see, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, more broadly, Hong Kong, the Hong Kong government is really pushing hard for the city to become, again, a popular destination, destination for tourists, destination for businesses, you name it. So Hong Kong, as you know, and that's covered in the book, we went through several years of sort of, well, craziness, with extreme uncertainties and extreme isolation during the pandemic. We reopened our borders much later than a lot of our neighboring cities. So we lost a lot of momentum. And so this month it's called Super March by the government because they decided to, well, I suppose encourage organizers of major events like in sports, there's the Rugby Sevens, that's one of the biggest international sports event in Hong Kong. There's the international, there's the Hong Kong Arts Festival, and there's Complex Con, and there's the Museum Summit. Like it's all happening together.
Yeah, a lot for
a
visitors.
lot. So this is the Hong Kong, an effort to restart Hong Kong.
Yeah, I really feel about that when in the convention center yesterday for the first VIP day of the Art Basel Hong Kong. As you mentioned, that this convention center is also a witness of lots of art and art world events, art market events. And what's your feeling for yesterday's atmosphere? And lots of people ask, compared to last year, or compared to the first year after pandemic, or compared to before pandemic, do you think this comparison really makes sense?
Well, I think, I find that it's quite difficult sometimes to make a general and accurate reading of art fairs because obviously all the sales happen privately.
Yes.
So our access to information is limited.
Yes.
But it's at the same time, a lot of people have noticed that there are more Western collectors present. So I was talking to today's ROPAC, and the gallery was quite surprised that, well, to one, see top European collectors in Hong Kong, and two, to sell to top European collectors. So I think at the beginning of Art Basel Hong Kong, 2013, there was a lot of curiosity, I suppose. So people from all over the world, Europe, America, they all came, right, to see what fuss is about, and also because it was then basically, the only major contemporary art fair in the region. And but in the intervening years, a lot of people stopped coming because it's a long, especially from America, it's a long way to fly, right?
Yeah, Josh mentioned that.
And and now there's so many fairs, it's competitive, so it's quite interesting to see. I don't think there are that many American visitors, but apart from the institutions, but it's interesting that there are European collectors back, and there are a lot of people who are not buying, but also from around the world, because like I mentioned, there's the Museum Summit. So I think a lot of, somebody said to me, maybe 60 institutions from around the world have sent people here. And they may not be people on the acquisition committees, but they could be curators or directors, but they're influencers, right? Major influences in the art world, so it's important that they're here. In terms of the art, I think the galleries are still very obviously strategic, quite conservative, I would say. And there's a satellite fair also, Art Central, that opened on Monday. And I noticed I have to say it's the 10th edition, so they've really raised the bar in terms of for the public program especially. So there's really good stuff there, video art, in the cinema sector, and also the art presented in the galleries, in the booths at Art Central. I would say it's definitely more impressive this year than last year. And I was having an interesting discussion with an Asian gallerist, a very experienced Asian gallerist, Richard Ko, about what people want to buy as we live in this, well, era of great global changes. And he said, the international galleries that never showed, say, Chinese art before or Asian art before, and in recent years they are signing up more artists in the region, or at least showing Asian artists in Art Basel Hong Kong. And if we remember, if we think back to sort of the beginning of the contemporary art market, like the big wave in this part of the world, it was very much driven by Chinese collectors' demand for Chinese contemporary art. It's so, and then for many years the taste changed. You see a lot of private museums in China especially, and also elsewhere in the region, sort of gobbling up Western contemporary art, right? And we're wondering if the pendulum is going to swing back a bit. I mean, of course, the big galleries, they need I mean, Western artists are still the most, their artworks are still, where the big bucks come from, right? But at the same time, I have noticed, for example, like White Cube has just signed Chinese artist Xiao Fan. So maybe the pendulum is going to swing back a bit. And I was also having an interesting discussion with an African and with a Nigerian gallery here for the second time. They came in 2023. They're back second time. It's Retro Africa, and they're saying the last few years, last 2.5 years, their strategy is to prioritize Asian art fairs, because they're saying it's not just business, but it's the need to have direct conversation with Asia without having the West as the gatekeeper of those kind of conversations, as we did traditionally, historically. And I think that's an important point too.
Yeah, and in your book you provided very interesting and impressive analysis on Hong Kong's relationship interactions with both the Western art market system and mainland China buyers. And it's interesting, and also your answer just now also gives more layers on how it interacts with the different, like you mentioned, that Africa and also different parts of Asia. Yeah. Do you think this dynamic change to more like multicultural in this way, and how will they impact the local art ecosystem and the creative landscape? Because you also, in this book, you also mentioned that there is the Hong Kong identity, which is actually relatively independent from both the Western and the mainland China art ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, Hong Kong is an open city, and I mean that's the one big advantage that has made it into such a big art market, because there's no tax. It's an open port. It has always done business with everybody in the world, and part of that DNA is reflected in its cultural ecosystem. So, unlike, say, a lot of institutions in Asia, so if you look at the makeup of the people who work at M+ Museum, so that's a very good example of, I suppose, Hong Kong's cosmopolitanism. You have a director who's Sri Lankan-born Australian. You have a artistic director who's Korean-born, Korean-American, and so on and so on. They've got, I don't know the exact number, but they do talk about how they had like, I don't know, dozens of nationalities among their ranks. And so it is an indication, I suppose, of how international Hong Kong's So the people who make up the art scene here are. At the same time, there's always been tension between this sort of world-facing cosmopolitanism with the more traditional and nationalistic identity. I suppose it's more ethnic, I suppose, rather than nationalistic, I would say ethnic Chinese identity that has, of course, also been part of Hong Kong's DNA, because 90, I don't know the precise percentage now, but since Hong Kong, this place appeared on the map, the majority population has always been ethnic Chinese. So the number, I think the number fluctuates from between 93% and 95% or something like that, which is of course in line with a lot of cities around Asia. But, well, no, apart from more diverse populations, say in Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. But compared to, say, Tokyo or mainland Chinese cities, I think it's quite, it's that dominance of one ethnicity is, it's comparable. But at the same time, that outward-facing DNA means that perhaps there is this sort of 3 or 4% of the population that are from outside of an ethnic Chinese identity, and that matters a lot, especially in the art scene. And so we've seen non-profit art spaces, for example, like Parasite, forming huge international networks, and Asia Art Archive, again, you know, they have major projects around the world, in India, in Myanmar, and so on. And so that has long been the case, that because, you know, Hong Kong is a small place, so you can't really just focus on the city. At the same time, that Hong Kong identity that you talk about, it has become more pronounced, sort of from just before the city was handed over back to China, so 1990s. Obviously, when as a colonial, as a colony, that feeling that you're not in charge has always been with us. And in recent years, that feeling has only grown. And it's not just because of Beijing's more sort of iron-fisted approach to running Hong Kong since the 2019 protests. It's also to do with what's happening outside of China, obviously, with Trump's policies, the tariffs. That's something that's talked about a lot in every sector of society. But I think that sort of perilous position that Hong Kong has always occupied, you know, squeezed from all sides, and having to be versatile and adapt, is something that resonates with a lot of people around the world now.
Yes.
And I think, you know, I always think of art as a place, as a space where universality is brought out, our common humanity. And I think there may be people who feel that, oh, you know, Hong Kong art compared to like the grand themes of mainland Chinese art, it's quite marginal, it's so local. You know. But I always think that with art, you see something by an artist who comes from a completely different context from your own, and yet you will see yourself in it. It doesn't matter that you are not from that same world in which that artwork is made, right? And I think, hopefully, people will see that in Hong Kong art more and more.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good perspective, and it's also my feeling when I visited M+ Picasso show. Because when I received the press release, I did not read it through in China. I think it all is just because I have been reading the news about Picasso shows as blockbuster shows all over the world.
Yeah.
I thought
And there were so many
Yeah, I
in
thought
2023.
Yeah, I thought it just because in Beijing there is also
You had the
one,
UCCA one, yeah.
and it's a very good example for the media as a profitable
Yeah.
exhibition.
And in fact,
Yeah.
the UCCA one had a lot more Picassos.
Yeah, yeah.
Than the M+ show,
yeah.
they had over 100 pieces.
Yeah.
From Paris, the M+ one has 60 odd
Yeah.
pieces.
But the
yeah.
but the M+ one is really impressive. It includes lots of different artists, either from M+ collection of Asian art. Yeah, art from different Asian countries, and also artists with Asian identities or backgrounds, and also some of the Lund artworks that can make some dialogues, cultural exchange with Picasso's work. Actually, personally, I think those works are more interesting than Picasso ones.
Interesting.
Because Picasso ones I have been very
seen them
familiar,
so many times, yeah.
so many times, and in the narrative, in history, Western art history narrative.
Yeah.
But those artworks like. Hong Kong local artist Louis Chen, whom actually I wrote about when he had an exhibition in Shanghai, around more than 10 years ago, and also
that was at the Power.
Chen Fushan.
Oh, okay.
Louis Chen.
Not at PS. Yeah. Not at the
not
place,
PS,
not at
Shanghai
PSA.
Museum. Shanghai Museum.
Oh, right,
Shanghai Art Museum at that time. Yeah. And also he was born in Panama actually, and also Wilfred Lam, who was born in Cuba and also got famous in Paris, and also some Chinese and Hong Kong. Mainland China and Hong Kong contemporary artists born after the 1980s. I think this so diverse artist, and even has the pigeons painted by Qi Baishi, who is the 20th century mainland China artist, used very traditional way and also revolutionized the way of traditional painting. But they have something in common found in Qi Baishi's pigeon and also Picasso's pigeon, and gives some background of how pigeon became a symbol of peace, which is really relevant with today's context of war and peace.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. There are lots of dialogues that also has something to do with like the identity fluidity and the fluidity of nationality in Hong Kong here.
Yeah, it's I think it's an important show in that it presents an important model for us here to look at Western art and Western art history, which and it, to be honest, a lot of people were very surprised when M+ announced that their blockbuster, and it is a blockbuster show. They need to sell tickets, and this Picasso shows always sell tickets, like you said. So a lot of people were surprised that for their March Art Month blockbuster show, they're showing Picasso. It's like, wow, did we really build M+ to show Picasso? You know, M+ being an institution to challenge our existing perception, America-dominated art history. But so it's extremely important that they just didn't fly in a ready-made Picasso show, like you said, and instead turn it into a dialogue. I mean, they're not. There are places that I reviewed it. There are certain places that I wasn't, you know, wowed by, but they're also very creative and exciting clashes in a way. That's in it, and it's well presented, most of it. And but at the same time, I was mentioning that there's always been this tension, right, in Hong Kong, which is a you know, a lot of, you know, the cliche is, oh, Hong Kong is where East meets West. And you know, the official slogan is Hong Kong is the cultural bridge between East and West. Well, Hong Kong isn't the perfect example of East-West coexistence, because there's always been that uneasy sort of cohabitation in a way between, in the old days, the British colonial power and the Chinese elite and the ordinary people, right? It was, Hong Kong was, as a British colony, a place where people agreed for practical reasons to overlook the differences and try and find a way to get on together and to make this place great. But it wasn't ever a place where there was, peaceful integration and all that, right? So that kind of tension is still here, but in a very different way now that we're part of China. And so, for example, the people who would see M+ as kind of a Western international mode of doing things that may not give enough of a voice to more traditional ways of doing things, but are still valid ways of doing things, perhaps. So M+ has, for about the last 10 years, been in charge of the Hong Kong exhibition in the Venice Biennale. So Hong Kong has, for longer than mainland China, has had a pavilion in Venice, though because Hong Kong is not a nation, it's not a nation, it's not called a national pavilion. It's but it's right outside the entrance to the Arsenale exhibition, so it's a great spot. So M+, after it took over, decided to go for solo exhibitions, very conceptual artists, and it's more the Venice way of doing things, I suppose. And I would say that it's managed to get quite a lot of, the shows were well attended, I suppose.
Yeah.
But now, the Hong Kong government has decided to give the next Venice Biennale to the Hong Kong Museum of Art, which is a government-run museum, long history. And I think it's going to be a group show. There's an open call. So it's a very different approach. And there are painters in Hong Kong who say, ooh, we're really hoping that we will be selected now, because like back when M+ was doing it, they would never have gone for like paintings, right? So we'll see. So this competition, the different ways of different values, different methods, different ideologies, and right now in Hong Kong, it's kind of everybody is having a say.
Yeah.
And because I should add that the government has also published a art just after this book went to the printers. So in a way, it's bad timing, but I don't think this new government art and culture blueprint, I don't think it changes anything in a dramatic way. It just kind of reinforces the government's messages that are in the book. Namely, Hong Kong should be the place where people can see Chinese soft power through traditional art forms, and also be a place where there are lots of cultural exchanges.
Yeah, that gives us a really good,
the cultural, the traditional culture that's being promoted, you've definitely seen a lot more of it.
Yeah. So I think for the future of Hong Kong, I think starting from the competition, the tension you described in your response to my question and in this book, I think that's what is the next chapter we should wait and see how it goes.
And I mean, Hong Kong has changed a lot in the last few years because as I say in the chapter about the national security law that was brought in 2020, it brought in a new sort of regime of censorship that didn't exist in Hong Kong before, and that has led to a lot of a major loss of talents from Hong Kong, from all sectors of society, including the arts. So there has been a bit of a brain drain.
Yeah.
And also, people are still trying to suss out where this new red line is, because as most red lines are, they're pretty vague sometimes and subjective. And so, when I was writing the book, especially in the time just after Hong Kong reopened its borders, it was a time when, I suppose, I remember when there were American galleries and also artists who were boycotting Art Basel after the introduction of national security law. But since then, I mean, it's a big blow to Hong Kong's reputation, of course, because Hong Kong used to be one of the freest cities in Asia, if not the freest city in Asia. But now that we're living in a world at a time of great uncertainty, and there's curators in Europe and America also struggling with censorship or self-censorship. So relatively, I think the perspectives have changed. Hong Kong is lucky that way, in a way. It doesn't stand out so much anymore with its new censorship, because
So time is almost there. So I really thank you,
Annie, so
for sharing. And I think Annie knows quite a lot more than what we covered in this conversation.
Well, we
so
haven't
you go
talked
back
about
read
the economy yet, but
read this book, and it's available on Amazon, both the hard copy and the digital version.
Kindle, yes.
Yeah, and Kindle version. And thank you for watching the Baer Faxt Live from Hong Kong 2025. And we'll come back in around half an hour with another guest, Billy Tang. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.